The silence of space was broken only by the steady hum of Kim Tae-ho's mining ship. He floated near the wreckage of mining station Gamma 7, searching through twisted metal and floating debris. His company had sent him to collect any valuable materials before the station's remains drifted too far into the asteroid field. Tae-ho had been working alone in space for 3 years now. He preferred it this way. No arguments about work schedules, no complaints about music choices, just him, his ship, and the endless black of space. The pay was good enough to support his family back on Earth, and that was all that mattered. He guided his small ship between two large chunks of broken hull plating. His scanners showed traces of rare metals inside the wreckage. As he moved closer, something caught his eye. A strange shape drifted slowly past his window. At first, he thought it was just another piece of debris. Then it moved. Tae-ho stopped his ship and stared. The thing floating outside was clearly alive, but barely. It was about the size of a human but looked nothing like any species he had ever seen. The creature had smooth, scaled skin that seemed to change color from dark green to deep blue. Strange markings covered its body, glowing faintly like dying stars. The being's limbs were long and graceful, ending in hands that looked almost human. Its head was elongated, with large eyes that were now closed. Tae-ho could see wounds across its body, some still bleeding a silver liquid that froze instantly in the vacuum of space. Every regulation Tae-ho had ever learned told him to stay away. Unknown alien species were supposed to be reported to authorities immediately. Contact was forbidden without proper clearance and safety protocols. But as he watched, the creature's faint glow grew weaker. It was dying. Tae-ho had always hated seeing things suffer. As a child, he would bring home injured birds and stray cats, much to his mother's dismay. His ex-wife had often complained that he cared too much about everyone except himself. Maybe she was right, but he could not change who he was. He brought his ship closer to the drifting creature. Using the ship's mechanical arms, he carefully pulled the being into his small cargo bay. The artificial gravity took hold, and the creature collapsed onto the metal floor. Up close, Tae-ho could see how badly it was hurt. Burns covered most of its body, and several deep cuts leaked that strange silver blood. The creature's breathing was shallow and weak. Without help, it would be dead within hours. Tae-ho sealed the cargo bay and pumped in atmosphere. He then put on his emergency suit and entered the bay. The creature did not move as he approached, but its large eyes opened slowly. They were the color of deep ocean water, filled with intelligence and something that looked like resignation. The being tried to speak, but only a weak, clicking sound came out. Tae-ho knelt beside the creature and opened his medical kit. He was no doctor, but 3 years of working alone in dangerous conditions had taught him basic first aid. "Easy there," Tae-ho said softly, though he doubted the creature could understand him. "I am going to help you." The alien's eyes followed his movements as he cleaned the wounds. Its blood was indeed silver and seemed to glow slightly. Tae-ho had no idea if human medical supplies would work on alien biology, but he had to try something. He applied synthetic skin patches to the worst cuts and used healing gel on the burns. The creature winced, but did not try to pull away. When Tae-ho offered it water from his emergency supplies, the being drank eagerly. Its throat worked differently than a human's, but it managed to swallow the precious liquid. Hours passed as Tae-ho worked. He used spare blankets to make the creature more comfortable and set up a heating unit to keep the cargo bay warm. The alien's color began to change from the sickly pale shade it had been to something closer to healthy green-blue. Finally, exhausted, Tae-ho sat back against the wall. The creature's breathing had improved and its wounds had stopped bleeding. It might actually live. The alien turned its head toward him and made a series of soft sounds. Tae-ho activated his universal translator, a basic device that most space workers carried. After a moment, the machine began converting the sounds into words. "Why?" was the first word that came through clearly. "Why what?" Tae-ho asked. "Why help?" "You do not know me. I am nothing." "Property." The translator made the creature's voice sound, hollow and electronic, but Tae-ho could hear sadness in the original sounds. "You were hurt," Tae-ho said simply. I could not just leave you to die. The alien's eyes widened. It struggled to sit up and Teho helped support its weight. I do not understand. Your kind is unknown to me. What do you want in return? Nothing, Teho replied. I just wanted to help. The creature stared at him for a long moment. Its markings began to glow brighter, pulsing slowly like a heartbeat. What is your name? Teho asked. The alien made several clicking sounds, but the translator produced only static. I have no name, the creature finally said in words the machine could process. Names were taken from my people long ago. We are given only numbers. I am designated 779. Teho felt a cold anger in his chest. What kind of monsters would take away someone's name? That is not right, he said. Everyone should have a name. The alien's head tilted slightly like a bird trying to understand a new sound. You would give me a name? Teho looked at the creature's glowing markings, which reminded him of constellations. Beol, he said. It means star in my language. Your markings look like stars. The creature repeated the name slowly, testing how it sounded. Its markings flared brighter. Beol, it said again, and for the first time, Teho thought he heard something like wonder in its voice. Over the next 2 days, as Beol grew stronger, it began to tell Teho its story. The creature belonged to a species called the Asthan. They had once been a peaceful people, living on a world of great forests and singing rivers, but the hegemony empire had come with ships and weapons and chains. The Asthan were taken as slaves, forced to work in dangerous mines and factories throughout hegemony space. Their names, their history, their culture, all of it was stripped away to make them easier to control. Beol had been a slave for over 200 years, though it looked young by Asthan standards. My people are naturalists, Beol explained as they shared Teho's simple meal of processed protein bars. We lived in harmony with our world. We had no weapons, no armies. When the hegemony came, we did not know how to fight. How did you end up here? Teho asked. I was working on the mining station when it was attacked by pirates. In the chaos, I managed to escape my restraints and hide, but I was badly injured in the fighting. I thought I would die floating in space, forgotten and nameless. Beol's large eyes focused on Teho. You have given me something I thought was lost forever. Hope. That night, as Teho tried to sleep in his small bunk, he thought about what Beol had told him. An empire that enslaved entire species and erased their identities sounded like something from a nightmare. But here was living proof that such horrors existed in the galaxy. He also thought about Earth, his home world, where people lived free and spoke their own names with pride. How long would it be before the hegemony noticed humanity? What would happen to his family, his friends, everyone he cared about? Teho did not know it yet, but his simple act of kindness had already set in motion events that would shake the galaxy. In saving one nameless slave, he had planted the seed of something much larger. As he finally drifted off to sleep, Teho could hear Beol quietly repeating its new name, like a prayer of gratitude whispered to the stars. 3 days had passed since Teho rescued Beol from the cold embrace of space. The alien was healing faster than Teho had expected. The burns on its skin were fading to pale marks, and the cuts had sealed completely. More importantly, Beol seemed to be regaining something that went beyond physical health. The creature no longer flinched when Teho approached. Its markings glowed steadily now, creating soft patterns of light that reminded Teho of aurora dancing across a night sky. Sometimes he caught Beol staring at its own hands as if seeing them for the first time. You are different from other species I have known, Beol said during their morning meal. It had learned to eat human food, though it needed less than Teho did. Most beings in the galaxy see only what they can gain from others. Teho shrugged. My mother always said we should treat others the way we want to be treated. It seems like basic common sense to me. Beol tilted its head in that curious way it had. Tell me about your mother. Tell me about your world. So Teho did. He told Beol about Earth, about blue oceans and green forests. He described cities full of People from different cultures, all living together despite their differences. He talked about his family, his childhood, the mistakes he had made, and the lessons he had learned. In return, Bayal shared more about the Asthan and their lost world. Before the hegemony came, the Asthan had been philosophers and artists. They grew their cities in harmony with nature, building homes that looked like they had grown from the trees themselves. They had no concept of war or conquest. We believed all life was connected, Bayal explained. Hurting another being was like hurting yourself. This made us weak when the hegemony arrived. It did not make you weak, Tejo said firmly. It made you good. The galaxy needs more beings like the Asthan, not fewer. Bayal's markings flickered with what Tejo had learned with surprise. You truly believe this? Of course. Look at what you have taught me already. I never knew there were people in the galaxy who thought the way you do. It gives me hope. That afternoon, Bayal told Tejo something that made his blood run cold. The hegemony has a list, the alien said quietly. Worlds marked for conquest. I saw it once when I was forced to work in a communications center. Your Earth is on that list. Tejo stopped working on his ship's navigation system. What? The hegemony studies species before they attack. They have been watching humanity for some time. Your people's rapid advancement in technology has caught their attention. They also like your world's location. It would make a good staging area for further expansion. How long do we have? Tejo asked. I do not know. The hegemony moves slowly, but they are thorough. They prefer to attack when they are certain of victory. But Tejo, you must understand something important. Bayal leaned forward, its ocean-colored eyes intense. The hegemony thinks humans will surrender quickly, like my people did. They believe all species are weak when faced with superior force. They do not understand that some beings will fight even when they cannot win. They are going to learn, Tejo said grimly. Perhaps, but there is something else you should know. The hegemony does not just conquer worlds. They break spirits. They take everything that makes a people who they are and destroy it. Names, history, culture, hope. They leave only empty shells that work until they die. Tejo felt sick. The thought of his nephew and niece being turned into nameless slaves made his hands shake with anger. There has to be a way to stop them. I do not know of one, Bayal said sadly. They have conquered hundreds of worlds. Their fleets are vast, their weapons terrible. But perhaps your people will find a way. You are unlike any species I have known. On the fourth day, their time together was interrupted. Tejo's ship sensors detected 3 vessels approaching fast. His blood turned to ice when he recognized the design. Hegemony patrol ships. Hide, he told Bayal urgently. Get in the storage compartment and do not make any sound. Bayal understood immediately. Its markings dimmed until they were barely visible, and it squeezed into the small space behind Tejo's equipment storage. Tejo sealed the compartment just as the patrol ship surrounded his vessel. A harsh voice crackled over his communication system. Mining vessel, this is Hegemony Patrol Commander Vex Khan. Prepare to be boarded. Tejo had no choice but to comply. 3 armored figures teleported onto his ship. Their leader was tall and reptilian, with cold yellow eyes and scales that looked like metal armor. Vex Khan moved with the confidence of someone who had never been challenged. You are alone? The commander demanded. Yes, Tejo replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Just me and my mining equipment. Vex Khan's soldiers began searching the ship with scanning devices. Tejo's heart hammered in his chest. If they found Bayal, both of them would likely die. We are tracking escaped property, Vex Khan said, studying Tejo with those terrible eyes. An Asthan slave designated 779. It was last detected in this area. I have not seen any other beings, Tejo said. I have been alone, out here for weeks. Humans, Vex Khan sneered. Your species is not even worthy of proper conquest. When the time comes, you will make adequate servants. Nothing more. The insult stung, but Tejo forced himself to remain calm. Getting angry would only make the commander more suspicious. The search continued for what felt like hours. The soldiers scanned every inch of the ship except the sealed storage compartment, where Biol was hidden. Their equipment showed the compartment contained only mining supplies and spare parts. Finally, VexCon signaled his soldiers to stop. "You will report any contact with escaped property immediately," he told Taeho. "Failure to do so will result in your death and the destruction of your homeworld. Do you understand?" "I understand," Taeho replied. After the hegemony ships left, Taeho waited a full hour before releasing Biol from hiding. The alien emerged shaking, its markings flickering wildly. "You could have died," Biol said. "If they had found me, VexCon would have killed you without hesitation. Why did you risk so much for a slave you barely know?" Taeho looked at his new friend, this being who had endured centuries of suffering but still retained kindness and wonder. "Because you are not a slave," he said. "You are Biol. You are my friend. And friends protect each other." Biol stared at him for a long moment. Then the alien did something Taeho had never seen before. It placed both hands over its heart and spoke in its own language, the words flowing like music. The universal translator could not process the ancient sounds, but Taeho could hear the weight and importance of what was being said. "What did you say?" he asked. "It is a vow in the old tongue of my people," Biol replied. "I have sworn an oath that was once sacred among the Asthan. I cannot translate it properly into your language, but it means that your life is now as precious to me as my own. Your people are now my people. Your enemies are now my enemies. Biol, you do not need to." "It is done," the alien said firmly. "This vow cannot be broken or taken back. You have given me a name and hope. You have shown me that kindness still exists in the galaxy. I will spend the rest of my life honoring what you have taught me." That night, as they shared another simple meal, Taeho felt a strange sense of change in the air. He had saved one alien's life, but somehow he knew this was only the beginning of something much larger. Biol seemed different too. The creature sat straighter, and its markings pulsed with new purpose. For the first time since Taeho had found, Biol looked like something more than a broken slave. It looked like someone with a mission. "What will you do now?" Taeho asked. Biol's ocean eyes reflected the stars visible through the ship's window. "I will remember," it said quietly. "I will remember what you have shown me. And when the time comes, I will make sure others remember, too." Taeho did not fully understand what his friend meant, but he nodded. Tomorrow he would have to return Biol to a safe place and continue his own work. But he knew their paths would cross again. The galaxy was vast and dark, but somewhere in that darkness, hope had been rekindled. And hope, as Taeho was about to learn, could be the most powerful force in the universe. 6 months had passed since Taeho said goodbye to Biol at a remote trading station. He had returned to Earth and tried to warn anyone who would listen about the coming threat. Most people thought he was crazy. A simple mining engineer talking about alien invasions sounded like something from old science fiction movies. But Earth had changed in those months. Strange signals were being detected at the edge of the solar system. Ships with unknown designs had been spotted by deep space monitoring stations. The government was quietly preparing for something, though they told the public it was just routine military exercises. Taeho sat in his small apartment in Seoul, watching the news with growing dread. His sister Min-ju had called earlier, worried about the military buildup. His nephew and niece asked innocent questions about why so many soldiers were on the streets. He did not know what to tell them. Then it happened. The morning sky over Earth suddenly filled with massive shapes that blotted out the sun. Hegemony warships, each one the size of a city, hung in the atmosphere like dark clouds of metal and death. Smaller ships swarmed around them like angry insects. Every communication device on Earth crackled to life at the same moment. The voice that spoke was cold and mechanical, translated into every human language simultaneously. "People of Earth, you are now subjects of the Hegemony Empire. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick. Resist and you will suffer before you die. You have 1 hour to respond." Admiral Park So-jin stood in the command center of Earth, Defense Headquarters, staring at the tactical displays showing enemy positions. She had spent 30 years in the military, rising through the ranks during humanity's expansion into space. She had never faced anything like this. "How many ships?" she asked her aide. "Over 3,000 in the first wave, Admiral. Long-range sensors show more fleets approaching from hyperspace." General Li Dongwu joined her at the main display. His face was grim but determined. "The government has made its decision," he said quietly. "We fight." "Against this?" Admiral Park gestured at the overwhelming enemy force. "They could glass our entire planet in minutes. Maybe. But we are not going to make it easy for them." Around the world, similar conversations were taking place in military command centers. Humanity had exactly 1 hour to decide its fate. Some officials argued for surrender. The enemy was clearly superior in every way. Resistance would only lead to more death and suffering, but humanity had something the hegemony did not understand. In the face of impossible odds, humans did not just give up. They got angry. Commander Yoon Ji-hai of Earth Defense Intelligence was one of the few people who remembered Taeho's warnings. She had quietly investigated his story and found disturbing evidence that he was telling the truth. Now, as alien ships filled the sky, she realized they needed every advantage they could get. She found Taeho at his apartment, helping his family pack emergency supplies. "Kim Taeho," she said, showing her identification. "I need to speak with you about the alien you encountered." Taeho looked up from the bag he was packing. "You believe me now?" "I believe we need to know everything you learned about these hegemony forces. Every detail could save lives." In the next hour, Taeho told Commander Yoon everything Biol had shared with him. Hegemony tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. Most importantly, he explained how they expected quick surrender from all conquered species. "They have never faced a species that fights back after the initial defeat," Taeho explained. "Every other race either surrendered immediately or gave up after the first major battle. They do not know how to handle long-term resistance." "What about their weapons?" Commander Yoon asked. "Powerful, but they rely on fear as much as firepower. They prefer to break the spirit of their enemies rather than completely destroy them. Broken slaves are more useful than dead ones." When the hour was up, every major Earth government gave the same response. No. The hegemony's retaliation was swift and terrible. Planet-killing beams lanced down from the massive ships, turning major cities into seas of molten glass. New York, London, Moscow, Tokyo, all became burning scars on the Earth's surface in a matter of minutes. But instead of surrendering, humanity got angrier. Emergency governments formed in underground bunkers. Military units that should have been destroyed regrouped in hidden bases. Civilian populations evacuated to prepared shelters or fled to remote areas where they could continue fighting. Commander Vex Khan, now leading the Earth invasion, stood on the bridge of his flagship studying the reports. This was not going according to plan. "The humans should have surrendered by now," he told his aide. "We have demonstrated our power. We have destroyed their major population centers. Why do they continue to resist?" "Unknown, Commander. Their military forces are scattered but still active. Civilian populations are refusing to report to processing centers. Some are even attacking our ground forces with primitive weapons." Vex Khan had conquered 17 worlds for the hegemony. He had never seen anything like this. Usually, after the initial demonstration of power, conquered populations would line up to surrender. They would beg for mercy and offer to serve in exchange for their lives. These humans were different. The more he hurt them, the more fiercely they fought back. Reports came in from around the globe. A hegemony supply convoy ambushed by farmers with hunting rifles. A landing force trapped in the ruins of Berlin by civilians who refused to evacuate. An entire garrison base overrun by what appeared to be ordinary citizens armed with nothing but determination and improvised weapons. "They are like wild animals," Vex Khan's aide observed. "They do not know when they are beaten." "Then we will teach them," the commander snarled. "Double the bombardment. Target their remaining cities. Break their spirit completely." But even as more cities burned, humanity's resistance only grew stronger. Admiral Park coordinated guerrilla strikes from hidden bases. General Lee organized civilian militias in every remaining population center. Commander Yoon used Taeho's intelligence to predict enemy movements and set traps. Taeho himself had joined a resistance cell operating in the mountains outside Seoul. His knowledge of hegemony technology made him valuable, but more than that, he felt responsible. He had failed to convince anyone to prepare for this attack. Now all he could do was fight. 3 weeks into the invasion, something strange began happening. Hegemony forces throughout the galaxy started reporting problems. Supply convoys would disappear without a trace. Communication stations would go silent. Entire bases would be found abandoned, their personnel vanished. At first, VexCon assumed it was normal logistics problems or attacks by other enemy species, but the reports followed a pattern. The attacks were too precise, too well informed about hegemony weaknesses. "Someone is coordinating these strikes," his intelligence officer reported. "The attackers seem to know our protocols, our technology, our weak points. It is as if they were once part of our forces. Impossible. No conquered species has ever rebelled on this scale." But the attacks continued. More disturbing were the reports from slave camps throughout hegemony territory. Slaves were escaping in large numbers. Worse, they were organizing into fighting groups and liberating other camps. The escaped slaves were doing something the hegemony had tried to destroy centuries ago. They were choosing names for themselves. "The prisoners are calling their leader by a name we do not recognize," came one report. "They call it the Guardian of the Kind Ones. It appears to be an Asthan, but unlike any we have seen before." VexCon felt a cold touch of fear. He remembered the escaped Asthan slave from months ago. 779. Could one escaped slave really be causing this much trouble? On Earth, the Resistance received an unexpected message through channels they did not know existed. It was brief and transmitted in multiple languages, including Korean. The message was simple. Hold strong. Help comes. Remember the power of names. Remember Taeho, who saves the lost. Admiral Park stared at the message. Who sent this? Commander. Yoon looked at Taeho, who had gone very pale. I think, Taeho said slowly, it might be a friend, across the galaxy. In the deep reaches of space where no maps marked safe passage, something moved that the hegemony had thought was impossible. Free beings working together, former slaves who had remembered their dignity, and leading them was a creature that had once been nothing more than a number, but now carried a name given in kindness and a vow sworn in ancient words. The beast without a name had become something new, something dangerous, something the hegemony had never faced before, a protector who remembered what it meant to hope. The whisper started in the deepest parts of hegemony space, in slave camps where hope had died centuries ago. Workers in the mining pits of Korax Prime spoke of shadows that moved through the darkness. Prisoners in the factory worlds of the Outer Rim told stories of locked doors that opened by themselves in the night. At first, the guards dismissed these tales as the fantasies of broken minds. Slaves often created stories to make their suffering bearable. But then, the disappearances began. On the prison world of Vex 7, an entire barracks of Asthan slaves vanished overnight. The security cameras showed nothing. The guards found no signs of struggle. 150 beings simply ceased to exist, leaving behind only empty chains and a message carved into the metal wall. We remember our names. Commander VexCon studied the reports from his flagship orbiting Earth. The human resistance continued to be more stubborn than expected, but these slave rebellions were becoming a serious problem. Supply lines throughout the galaxy were being disrupted by coordinated attacks. How many incidents this week? He asked his aide. 47 confirmed attacks on hegemony facilities, 12 supply convoys destroyed, 3 garrison bases completely overrun. The pattern is spreading to sectors we thought were secure. VexCon's scaled fingers drummed against his command chair. What do the survivors report? That is the problem, Commander. There are rarely any survivors. When there are, they speak of a creature leading the attacks. They call it different names, but the descriptions are always similar. An Asthan, but changed somehow. Larger and more dangerous than any we have catalogued. Show me the security footage. There is none, sir. Every attack disables recording. Systems first. It is as if the attacker knows exactly where our equipment is located and how to destroy it. On the slave world of Drac 9, a hegemony mining supervisor named Krelvox was working late in his office when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in red light. He reached for his weapon, but a voice spoke from the shadows. Do not move. The words were spoken in perfect hegemony standard, but with an accent Krelvox had never heard before. A figure stepped into the light, and the supervisor's blood turned to ice. It was clearly an Asthan, but unlike any slave he had ever seen. This creature stood nearly 7 feet tall, its scaled skin rippling with muscle. The familiar markings of its species glowed bright blue-white, creating patterns that seemed to shift and dance. Its eyes were the deep blue of ocean storms, filled with intelligence and something far more dangerous, purpose. You are Krelvox, the creature said. It was not a question. You oversee the processing of new slaves in Sector 7. What do you want? Krelvox managed to whisper. I want you to remember something. Before you die, I want you to understand what you have done to my people. The Asthan moved forward with fluid grace. My name is Jiho. I was once called 779 like all my kind, but a human gave me back my name. He showed me that even in the darkest void, kindness exists. He saved my life when he had nothing to gain from it. Krelvox tried to draw his weapon but found his arm would not move. The Asthan's eyes seemed to glow brighter. You will not harm me, Jiho said calmly, just as I will not harm you, yet. What do you want? I want you to send a message to your commanders. Tell them that the guardian of the kind ones walks among the stars. Tell them that every slave who remembers their name becomes a weapon against oppression. Tell them that what they have sown in cruelty, they will reap in justice. Jiho stepped closer. But most importantly, tell them this. The humans they are trying to break have a protector now. Every attack on Earth makes me stronger. Every human who dies adds to my rage. And I am no longer alone. The creature gestured to the darkness behind it. Shapes moved in the shadows. Dozens of figures stepping into the light. They were all different species, all former slaves, but they stood with the same dignity and purpose that radiated from their leader. We have remembered our names, Jiho said, and we have chosen our path. The next morning, Krelvox was found unconscious in his office. The entire slave population of Drac 9 was gone. The facility's weapon stockpiles had been emptied, and carved into the metal desk where the supervisor had been found was a single word in ancient Asthan script: freedom. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On industrial worlds, in mining stations, on prison planets, the pattern was always the same. Facilities would go dark, slaves would disappear, and hegemony forces would find themselves facing an enemy that seemed to know their every weakness. The freed slaves were doing more than just escaping. They were learning to fight. More importantly, they were learning to hope. On the former prison world of Nex 4, thousands of liberated beings had gathered in the ruins of an ancient temple. They came from dozens of different species: Asthan, Valak, Therian, Korwan, and many others. What united them was not their biology, but their shared experience of suffering and their newfound determination to end it. Jiho stood before them, no longer the broken creature that Teho had found floating in space. The kindness shown by one human had awakened something in the Asthan species that had been dormant for centuries. Jiho had evolved, becoming something the galaxy had never seen before. My friends, Jiho spoke to the gathered crowd. We are no longer slaves. We are no longer numbers. We have names, we have purpose, and we have a debt to pay. A Velak female named Kira stepped forward. Like all her people, she had been enslaved for generations, forced to work in chemical processing plants that slowly poisoned her species. But now her orange skin glowed with health and her 6 eyes burned with determination. What of the humans? She asked. The reports say they still fight, but they are losing. The hegemony grows frustrated with their resistance. The humans showed us that kindness still exists, Jiho replied. One human saved my life and gave me back my identity. Now all humans are under my protection. We will not let them fall. An elderly Therian named Doc raised his hand. His people had been scholars before their enslavement, keepers of ancient knowledge. The hegemony's fleets are vast. Even with all of us fighting, can we truly challenge their might? Jiho's markings pulsed brighter. We do not need to match their strength. We need to be smarter. The hegemony has never faced an enemy that knows their tactics from the inside. We have worked their ships, maintained their weapons, cleaned their bases. We know every weakness, every flaw, every shortcut they take because they believe themselves invincible. The creature gestured to the night sky above them, where distant stars twinkled like the markings on its skin. More importantly, we fight for something they cannot understand. They fight for conquest and control. We fight for freedom and the memory of kindness. We fight because one human showed us that goodness still exists in this dark galaxy. Back on Earth, the war was not going well for humanity. 3 months of constant bombardment had reduced most major cities to rubble. Millions were dead, and millions more lived in underground shelters or remote hideouts. But humanity refused to surrender. In a bunker beneath the ruins of Seoul, Taeho worked with Commander Yoon to coordinate resistance activities. They had received more messages from their mysterious ally, always brief but encouraging. Hold strong. Liberation fleets are gathering. The beast remembers the kindness of Taeho. Who do you think it is? Commander Yoon asked for the 100th time. Taeho stared at the message. Something about the phrasing seemed familiar, but he could not quite place it. I think it might be someone I once helped. Someone who is returning the favor. High above Earth's atmosphere, Commander Vex Khan paced his bridge in frustration. The human resistance showed no signs of weakening. Worse, his supply lines were being systematically destroyed by forces he could not identify or track. Commander, his communications officer called out, "We are receiving a transmission. It is being broadcast on all frequencies simultaneously. Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was calm but carried an undertone of power that made even veteran hegemony warriors nervous. Commander Vex Khan, I know you remember me. I was once designated 779. You tried to recapture me 6 months ago. The human who protected me called me Biol, but I have chosen a new name for myself. I am Jiho, guardian of the kind ones, protector of Earth. Vex Khan's eyes widened. The escaped Asthan slave. It was impossible. One creature could not cause this much damage. I have a message for you, Commander. The humans you are trying to break taught me something your empire tried to destroy. They taught me the power of kindness, the strength of hope, and the value of protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The transmission continued, and Vex Khan realized with growing horror that this was not just a message. It was a declaration of war. You wanted to make me into a weapon, Commander. You succeeded. But I am not your weapon. I am theirs. And I am coming for you. The signal cut out, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. In the distance, space itself seemed to shimmer as unknown ships began dropping out of hyperspace. The beast had returned, and it was no longer alone. The space around Earth had become a graveyard of metal and dreams. For 4 months, the hegemony fleet had hammered humanity into near extinction. Commander Vex Khan stood on his bridge, watching the final assault preparations. Earth's remaining defenses were scattered and weak. This would be the last battle. All ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. Ground forces are prepared for the final sweep of human strongholds. Vex Khan nodded grimly. The humans had fought longer, and harder than any species in hegemony history, but it was finally over. After today, there would be no more resistance, no more defiance. Just broken slaves ready for processing. Begin the assault, he commanded. The massive hegemony ships moved toward Earth like a tide of destruction, their weapons charged, ready to finish what had been started months ago. But as they closed the distance to the planet, something impossible happened. Space exploded with light. Ships materialized from hyperspace in numbers that made even the vast hegemony fleet look small. But these were not hegemony vessels. They were ships of 100 different designs representing dozens of species that had been enslaved for centuries. At their head flew a vessel that VexCon recognized with cold shock. It was Teho's old mining ship, but transformed beyond recognition. Organic technology had merged with human engineering, creating something that looked alive. Strange markings glowed along its hull, pulsing like a heartbeat. "Commander," his communications officer called out in a shaking voice, "we are receiving a transmission from the lead ship. Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was calm but carried the weight of absolute authority. "Hegemony forces, this is Jiho, protector of Earth. You will withdraw from this system immediately, or face the consequences," VexCon snarled. "You are outnumbered, creature. My fleet numbers in the thousands." "Look again." The commander turned to his tactical display and felt his blood freeze. More ships were appearing every second, dropping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Vessels from every corner of the galaxy, all flying under banners that bore the same symbol. An ancient Asthan marking that meant freedom through unity. "Impossible," VexCon whispered. "Where did they all come from?" "From every world you have conquered," Jiho's voice replied. "From every species you have enslaved. From every being whose name you tried to steal. They remember now. They remember who they are, and they remember what you took from them." On Earth's surface, in a bunker beneath the ruins of Sol, Teho stared at the tactical displays with wonder. The sky above was filled with ships, more ships than he had ever imagined could exist, and leading them was his old friend. "Bayol," he whispered, finally understanding. Commander Yoon looked at him. "What did you say?" "The alien I saved. Its name was Biol, but now it calls itself Jiho. It kept its promise." Above them, the battle was about to begin, but first Jiho had something to say. "Commander VexCon, do you remember a human mining engineer you interrogated 6 months ago? His name was Kim Teho. You threatened him with death if he helped escape slaves." VexCon's eyes narrowed. He did remember. A weak human who had been alone in the asteroid fields. "That human saved my life when he had nothing to gain from it," Jiho continued. "He gave me a name when I had been reduced to a number. He showed me kindness when I had forgotten such a thing existed. Because of him, I remembered what I was meant to be." The transformed ship at the head of the Liberation Fleet began to glow brighter. "The Asthan were once guardians, protectors of all life. Your empire broke us and made us forget. But one human's compassion awakened what you tried to destroy. Now I am what my people were always meant to be, and Earth is under my protection." VexCon had heard enough. "All ships open fire, destroy them all." The battle that followed shook the very foundations of space. Hegemony ships designed for conquest and terror found themselves fighting beings who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. The liberated slaves knew every weakness of their former master's technology. They had built it, maintained it, and now they turned it against its creators. But more than superior tactics or numbers, the Liberation Fleet fought with something the Hegemony had never understood. They fought with hope. They fought with the memory of kindness shown by one human to one alien in the darkness of space. Jiho's ship moved through the battle like a force of nature. The creature that had once been helpless and dying now commanded power that seemed to bend reality itself. Hegemony ships found their weapons misfiring, their engines failing, their communications jamming at critical moments. "It is impossible." VexCon raged as his flagship shook under enemy fire. "One Asthan cannot do this." "One Asthan cannot," came Jiho's reply over the communication channel. "But I am no longer just one. I carry the hopes of every being you have enslaved. I carry the dreams of every species you have conquered, and I carry the kindness of the human who showed me that goodness still exists." The battle turned quickly. Hegemony ships began retreating or surrendering as they found themselves overwhelmed. Within hours, the mighty fleet that had terrorized Earth was either destroyed or fleeing for their lives. VexCon's flagship, engines damaged and weapons offline, drifted helplessly in space. The commander sat in his ruined bridge, staring at the displays that showed the complete destruction of his forces. A ship docked with his vessel. Airlocks opened and figures in combat armor boarded his ship. At their head walked Jiho, no longer. The broken slave Vex Khan remembered, but something magnificent and terrible. "You," the commander whispered. "Yes," Jiho replied calmly. 779 as you knew me. But that name died when a human showed me compassion. I am Jiho now. I chose this name to honor both my people's language and the man who saved me. It means one who protects with wisdom. Vex Khan tried to reach for his weapon but found he could not move. "You will not kill me," Jiho said, reading his intentions. "That would make me like you. Instead, you will live. You will be taken to a world where former slaves will decide your fate. You will learn what it means to be powerless and afraid." The Asthan turned to leave, then paused. "Before you go, know this. The hegemony is finished. Every slave camp has been liberated. Every conquered world is free. The empire you served exists only in scattered remnants, and even they will be found. All because one human chose kindness over indifference." 3 days later, Tejo stood on the observation deck of a space station orbiting Earth. The planet below was scarred but healing. Ships from dozens of worlds had brought supplies and aid. Humanity was no longer alone in the galaxy. Behind him, familiar footsteps approached. He turned to see Jiho, but the creature looked different again. Smaller than during the battle, more like the being Tejo remembered, but somehow more complete. "Hello, old friend," Jiho said. "Hello, Biol," Tejo replied, then corrected himself. "I mean Jiho. You can still call me Biol if you wish. That name will always be precious to me. It was the first gift you gave me." They stood together looking out at the stars. "What happens now?" Tejo asked. "Now we rebuild. The Free Worlds Alliance is forming, with Earth as one of its founding members. We will create a galaxy where no being is reduced to a number, where every species can grow and flourish, where kindness is valued above conquest." Jiho's markings pulsed gently, creating patterns that reminded Tejo of Aurora dancing across a night sky. "You started something when you saved me," the Asthan continued. "One act of compassion rippled across the galaxy and freed billions of beings. Never doubt the power of kindness, Tejo. It can change everything." "I just helped someone who was hurt," Tejo said simply. "Yes, and in doing so, you reminded the galaxy what goodness looks like. The hegemony ruled through fear and cruelty. We will rule through cooperation and hope." 6 months later, Earth's new ambassador to the Free Worlds Alliance sat in his office, reviewing reports from across the galaxy. Kim Tejo had never imagined he would hold such a position, but the other species insisted. The human who had sparked the liberation should help guide what came next. Through his window he could see ships from 100 worlds coming and going. Former enemies worked together on projects that would benefit everyone. Children of different species played together in the station's gardens, learning each other's languages and customs. A soft chime announced a visitor. Jiho entered, no longer the terrifying guardian of war, but a friend coming to share tea and conversation. "How goes the work?" the Asthan asked. "Slowly but surely," Tejo replied. "Former slaves are learning to be free. Former enemies are learning to be friends. It will take time, but we are building something beautiful." "Yes," Jiho agreed, settling into a chair designed for its unique physiology. "We are building a galaxy where names matter more than numbers, where every being has value, where kindness is the highest law." They sat in comfortable silence, two friends who had changed the galaxy simply by choosing to care about each other. Outside, the stars shone brightly, and in that light, the future looked full of hope.